Rob. Hi, Rob.
Just come in at the very end, please. Yeah.
Can I call for 1 minute silence? Thank you.
Ron, just here, right.
We now have a wreath led by Mary McConville on behalf of the Belfast Brigade. Mary was a friend and comrade of volunteer Jimmy Quigley's. He's a lifelong Republican, but he's here today because he also was a friend and comrade of Jimmy Quigley. So we have now Tom Hartley.
Friends and comrades, this afternoon we have come together to remember 3 Republicans from the greater Ballymurphy area. These are Jimmy Quigley, Mondo Raw and James Spotter Murphy. Here at the Quigley home, I would like to reflect for some minutes on the life of Jimmy Quigley. The Quigley family were originally from Cypress Street in the Lower Falls. They later moved to Divis Flats. Jimmy had 6 brothers: Frank, Tommy, Brian, Jared, Marcus and Roy. Jimmy was born on the 28th of May 1954. His early education was in St. Peter's Primary School and then here in St. Peter's Secondary School here in Britain's Parade. We are very honoured that today we have Jimmy's mother Mary and his brothers and his wide family circle joining us here for this simple commemoration of this remarkable young Republican. I met Jimmy Quigley in or around 1970. At the time he was 16. My lasting memory of Jimmy was a smile on his face. All of us who met him were struck by his happy demeanour. Yet underneath his youthful exuberance was a serious young man who loved Irish history and the study of the Irish language. In the early months of 1969, he had joined his local Féinas Flua and then later had entered the ranks of the Irish Republican Army. Jimmy and I were arrested out of Barney McGivern's house in Ballymurphy in July 1970. He ended up getting 6 months in St. Patrick's Home on the Glen Road, and I ended up in the Crum. On his release from St. Patrick's, he immediately immersed himself back into the struggle. In early 1972, he was first interned on the Maidstone prison ship and then moved to McGilligan. He was released in July 1972. Jimmy Quigley was shot dead at the corner of Albert Street and Servius Street by the British Army on the 29th of September 1972. He was 18 years old and an active service volunteer of the Irish Republican Army. When he died, he was still a student at St. Peter's Secondary School and had been in the process of taking his A-levels. Jimmy Quigley was an ordinary young man raised inside a loving and caring Lower Falls family. His life should have been a long and happy contribution to his family and to his community. But the journey of his young life was to be disrupted by the political upheaval of the northern state. Today, we stand in awe at his strength and his determination, which can be found in his individual willingness to meet the enormous challenge of his time. He clearly understood that the rotten edifice of partition and the northern state had to be toppled. It is a testament to the great strength he received from his mother and his brothers that in a period of great political turmoil, he committed his young life to the defence of his community and to the advancement of a more peaceful and a more just form of society. Jimmy was to pay the ultimate price to his commitment to the ideals of Irish republicanism. In his death, we were to witness the reaffirmation of the historic demand of the Irish nation for an end to English government in Ireland. There is a long and enduring direct line to those other 18-year-olds who give their lives in the cause of Irish freedom and self-determination. Jimmy Quigley stands alongside Tom Williams, who was executed by the British on the 2nd of September 1942. He stands with Kevin Barry, who was executed by the British on the 1st of November 1920. He stands in the company of all those Irish Republicans who through their actions opposed the tyranny of English government in Ireland. It is through remembrance of our patriot dead that we attach and measure the value that we the living place on our actions to gain freedom, democracy, equality, and national independence. It is through their sacrifice that we continue to measure our commitment to the achievement of political goals that have been carried to us on the shoulders of countless generations of Irish Republican men and women. Our Patriot Dead remind us of our humanity, that we should live for us and not for me, that human progress built on the sacrifice of many thousands of our patriots is a gift that must be cherished. When we look back on the history of the Irish struggle, we are struck by the enormous contribution made by young men and women. We are struck by the energy and commitment young people have made in the cause of Irish independence and freedom. It is no coincidence that their energy and commitment have always been met with the full savagery of the British state. Tyrants are particularly afraid of the young, for young people are the bridge between the older generation of patriots and the generation to follow. It is often the young people in struggle who add new layers of tactical and strategic thinking to the practice of struggle and to the political wisdom of older generations. It is for this reason that I wish to appeal to young people here today. Your energy and your commitment is required in our struggle for national independence. Jimmy Quigley has left us with so many precious memories. We, who had the honour of knowing him, know that our lives were touched by a very special human being. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. We'd now like to commend the White Rock West Rocks Association for making this day possible, along with the local Sinn Féin Common and local activist Republicans. We'd also like to thank them for the efforts that they made with the play park at the corner here for the children and the Remembrance Community Garden in West Rock. It's a very proud success, and congratulations to everybody involved. Just before we proceed on, the next part of the parade, we will stop at Divismore Way, where wreaths will be led by the Sinn Féin Common, the Ballymurphy Martyrs and the Pierce Jordan Common. Also the Charlie Hurley Common, West Cork, and of course the Republican Volunteers Committee, the Commemoration Committee. So these wreaths will be left at Divismore Way in the Commemoration Garden. It will stop just for a short while and then proceed on to Mundo Ross House. So everybody can just fall in then, as it were before, and we'll continue on. We call in the colour party.
Rob, play more shell.
Will people just fall in, please, behind the parade?
Where's Tom, eh? Where's Tom, eh? There's some over there I can't get in.
Connor, Scabaggy. That's for memory card.
Jimmy,
Alright, kid.
who's this? A grandson?
That's him, yep. It's calling the boo.
What?
First of all, this is the second part of any months leading up to this. So first and foremost, we're here today to unveil this plaque over above this house to volunteer Eddie Mundo Raw. Thank you. I'm now going to call Geraldine Quinn to come forward and play the lament, which is to be followed straight into a minute's silence. very much, Freddie. Thanks very much, Glenn. That race is led on behalf for Mondo and also for Spatter. I'm now going to call our main speaker for today at this part of the event. As a person, I'm glad to call a friend and a comrade. And I asked him for a bio the other day about his life. And I was amazed. I never knew this much about the man. And he actually, to me, he's the epitome of what the Republican struggle is, what the Republican movement is, and why we're here today. He's a man, no one in this street can ever speak on behalf of our deceased comrades, but people like Fran McCann are the people who epitomise it. I'm just going to read out that, the bio which he sent to me, and forgive me if he's getting a bit above himself here, but Fran's been a member of the Republican movement for over 37 years. Fran's been interned twice, both in the Maidstone and in Long Kesh for 3.5 years, and then again for 3 years and 2 months. When he was interned, he received 9 months for escaping, and when he came back in, he received a further 3 years, which he spent on the blanket. After 15 months on the crumb, which he spent in solitary confinement. He spent most of his time on the blocks in H3, and upon his release, he threw himself back into the Republican movement. He threw himself back into Sinn Féin, and he threw himself back into one of the most important parts of the Republican movement we are now, it's community activism. He was central in the committee to get Davis Flats demolished. He's been central to this day as a party's housing spokesperson. He's elected councillor, he's been elected MLA. I would just like to ask you to put your hands together and give a warm, upper strengthy welcome to Fran McCann.
I can't remember saying that all about myself. Must have got harder right now for me. Carja, I would like to start by thanking the organisers of this event today for inviting me to speak at this commemoration. It is always an honour to have been asked to say a few words at a commemoration or any event celebrating the lives of those who dedicated their lives for Irish freedom. The fact that you know the people you're speaking about makes it a privilege indeed. It is always difficult to try and put into a few minutes the lives of people who stood so tall in their communities. It is always difficult to do justice to the memory of people who give so much. Today we celebrate the lives of Thief Area volunteers. Today we commemorate the lives of Jimmy Quigley, Edward Mondo Raw and Spatter Murphy. I'm sure there's not a day or week goes by for people without thinking about Jimmy, Mondo or Spatter. For their families, their memories are everlasting. That is why gatherings like this are so important, not only from a commemorating perspective, but also from an educational one. We are the inheritors of this struggle. We have a duty and responsibility to ensure that young people know who Mondo Raw, Jimmy Quigley and Spatter Murphy were, and why they are so important to us as a community. I have to commend Republicans from the Upper Springfield who have ensured by this and other projects about recent Republican history, which keeps alive the memory of those who shaped that history are remembered in the proper fashion. When Padraig Adams Jr. told me about the project they were involved with and asked if I would participate in some way, I immediately said yes. One of the things he asked me to do was to do an interview for a DVD they were producing. Believe it or not, I'm a fairly shy person and don't like doing interviews, and I know most people here would find that hard to believe. But when I asked him what it was he wanted me to cover in the interview and what about loose talk, he said, "You'll be all right, don't worry about loose talk." It was over 30 years ago. But when people looking at the lives of Mondo, Jimmy and Spatter and ask what makes them special, what made them stand out amongst their community, what have they done in their lives to earn the respect they have within their community, the answer is simple. They were the bringers of change. They were the people who said no to a corrupt state. They were the people who had the strength to join the ranks of the IRA and the people who raised the flag of freedom for another generation of Irish people. They were ordinary people, caught up in extraordinary times, called upon to do extraordinary things. That is what made them the people they were. I had the privilege of knowing both Mondo and Jimmy in my early Republican days in the Falls area. The local IRA company had proved an effective unit in the war against the British. In fact, the competition to operate was fierce, but you always found Mondo and Jimmy to the fore. Also during this period, a bond was cemented, a friendship built on sharing life and death together. I will never forget the 29th of September 1972. I was standing in the gateway of Maggie Marley's rag store with Frankie, Jimmy's brother, and Mondo. when someone told us that Jimmy had been shot dead. It is something I will never forget. I had been with Jimmy for several hours that morning and had left him within an hour before he died. Little did we know also that some months later, on the 12th of April 1973, sitting in Long Kesh, we would be devastated by the news that Mundo O'Rourke had been murdered in an entry off Regnan Street by British soldiers. Your incarceration made things worse, but being unable to do anything to mourn the loss of a friend and comrade. I would like at this stage to ask people again to observe a minute silence, and in that minute, let us think of Mundo, let us think of Spatter, and let us think of Jimmy. For all the memories we hold dear, let us think of them now. Thank you. I would also like to mention 4 other comrades who passed away from the ranks of D Company this year, who in their own way and collectively made a huge impact in this struggle and would have been well known to Spatter, Mundo and Jimmy. George Gillen was a former OC at D Company and was OC of the attorneys in Long Kesh. Brian Hughes, or the Dark as he was known to all, and whose friendship with Jim Bryson, Tommy Tone and Paddy Mulvana from the Murph made a formidable unit. Kate Finnegan, coming to Mon, and Frank Bat McGreevy, brutally murdered some weeks ago. A terrible way to die for someone who had served this struggle so well. It is, hold on, sorry, second. When one looks back at the memories we hold and one thinks of the different periods of our history, it is hard to imagine that almost 40 years have passed. It is hard to take in the sacrifice made by Republican volunteers. And after all these years, when I think of Jimmy, I still see the face of that 18-year-old person smiling at me. When I think of Mundo, who was older than me, but who was always ready to give you advice, a deeply committed Republican who had a big heart and a great sense of humour. I did not know Spatter that well, but I knew of him. I knew that he was a Republican who stretched the generations, being arrested in 1936 after an attack on the RUC in the Clonard area. He was someone Republicans like myself held in high esteem. Spatter Murphy epitomised what a Republican was. He, through his life, never lost his Republican ideals, whether in the streets of Clonard or in the 1930s or lying in an English prison in the 1980s. His support for this struggle never lessened. Spatter died not long after his release and was buried from his sister Maggie's house in New Barnsley. He was to be the second Republican volunteer to be buried from the same house in 1973. Sorry, I lost my pages.
Do extra homework, bro.
So at this stage of the proceedings, I would like to say that
Your newborns leave, fra.
well, what's that photocopier?
Yeah, man.
But what I wanted to say anyway is that it saddens me to digress a bit from the main speech today, but I think it would be wrong of me not to stand here and raise an evil which has entered our community over the past number of years, and that is the evil of antisocial activity. I think it runs against everything that Spatter Murphy, Mundo O'Rourke and Jimmy Quigley stood for. And I believe that we have an obligation and a duty as Republicans to take part in whatever activities there are in areas by joining residents associations, community associations, and other groups, youth groups, to try and bring to an end the scourge of antisocial activity. I believe that with Mundo, what Spatter and what Jimmy represented, they were Republicans who believed in Irish independence. They believed that they're Republicans as represented people in areas, people in communities. So I would ask people, if there's one thing we take away from here, not only the memory of Mundo, Spatter and Jimmy, that we take away that we all have a part to play in this struggle, that we can all do something to make this place a better place for people to live in. And if we do that there, then we're living up the Republican ideals that Spatter, Mundo and Jimmy died for. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks very much for that. Just before we call upon the colour party to fall out, we'd just like to make a few thank yous today. And it's more or less to thank the Remember Our Volunteers Committee. This 5-year project which they've undertaken to commemorate all the volunteers in the Upper Springfield area. The work which they do is very, very commendable. And I know just from speaking to them, there's an awful lot of long hours work goes into events like today. So if we could I'd just like to give a call for a round of applause for the Remember Our Volunteers Committee.
How do you think the events went today?
Most amazing. I'm proud of everybody from Ballymurphy and the Lower Falls for honouring my brother and my uncle Jim the way they did. It's heart-rending. I'll never forget for what they done today. Never.
Thanks very much.
Where am I there, Dad? Will you have a third guest?
Just want to ask him how you think the events went today.
Just like to say, really appreciate
The torture. The torture.
It's such a wonderful day. Really enjoyed it. It's great that people put so much into it. Very happy day. Very, very proud day for me. Thanks very much. Thanks very much to everybody. Thanks very much.
God bless everybody in the house.
Oh,
See the gentleman
Mama.
But I couldn't remember which one you were.
That's a good.
There's a bigger one next door.
I haven't got copies of them. Give it to them.
You can that then? You can.
Should already have a picture of it.
What do you want to do?
Right, boys, how do you think today's went?
Good turnout, nice day for it. Much more emotional. We're glad to see it after 35, 40 years.
Yeah, it was just great after more than 30 years. Just so many people speaking to her and showing up. I remembered some very brave moments.
Come here, lads.